If I could just have someone share the screen. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Trinity College and Yukon Hillel Yom Hashoah commemoration. Yom Hashoah, or Holocaust Remembrance Day, begins tomorrow evening and continues into Thursday. The Holocaust was a horrific tragedy that brought unspeakable sorrow to millions. It is so important that the world continues to mourn the victims and learn from the survivors so that we can live up to the common phrase we repeat, never again. We wanted to give students an opportunity to have an intimate conversation with a survivor, which is why Mark Schoenwetter is here with us tonight, as well as his daughter, Anne Arnold. It is such an honor to be in their presence. This conversation may be difficult and emotional, but our attendance here today is a testament to Jewish perseverance. The communal mourning and healing that you feel tonight speaks volumes about the strength of the Jewish people in the face of persecution. And as Anne says in her book, the way to survive, and especially to thrive, is through togetherness. We will begin with a candle lighting ceremony, in which we will light 6 yahrzeit candles to represent the 6 million Jews taken from us in the Holocaust. First, Trinity College students Joshua Jacobus, Hillel Leadership Council President, and Harrison Silver, Hillel Leadership Council Holocaust Education Chair, will recite a couple readings, and then they will light the candles along with Yukon Hillel students Ryan Moraes, Jess Baden, Avital Sutton, and survivor Mark Schoenwetter.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for coming. So we're going to start this off. I have 2 readings, and then we're going to light the candles. So this first reading is We Commune by Abba Kovner, who is the parsonage leader in the Vilna region, poet, writer, and activist who lived from 1918 to 1987. Today, on the 27th of Nisan, Holocaust martyrs and heroes / Remembrance Day, we commune with the memory of the 6 million members of our nation who perished as tormented martyrs at the hands of the Nazis and their helpers, of the communities and families of the House of Jacob that were destroyed and obliterated in a malevolent scheme to eradicate the name and civilization of Israel from under heaven. We remember with respectful awe the fortitude of our brethren who gave their lives for their people in sanctity and purity, the sublime valor of those quarantined in the ghettos, and of the fighters who rose and kindled the flame of rebellion to redeem their people's honor. Their lofty, relentless struggle of the Jewish masses for their humanity and their Jewish civilization, and the righteous among the nations who saved Jews at the risk of their own lives. And then this next reading is The Blessing of the Yellow Candle by Rabbi Jules Harlow. As I light this yellow candle, I vow never to forget the lives of the Jewish men, women, and children who are symbolized by this flame. They were tortured and brutalized by human beings who acted like beasts, their lives taken in cruelty. May we be inspired to learn more about our 6 million brothers and sisters as individuals and as communities, and to recall their memories throughout the year. May we recall not only the terror of their deaths, but also the splendor of their lives. May the meaning of their lives inspire us to hollow our own lives and live in meaningful Jewish lives, so that we may help to ensure that the part of who they were shall endure always. Thank you again for everyone coming.
All right, now we can light the candles. Maybe we can unshare the screen so that we can see those being lit. And then Mark, did you want to light your candle as well?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now I have the great pleasure of introducing our guests, Mark Schoenwetter and Anne Arnold. Mark Schoenwetter feels blessed to have a life. As a young Jewish boy in Poland during World War II, he spent 3 years hiding with his mother and sister in the homes of kind Polish people during the winters and in the forest during the warm weather months. After the war, Mark, along with his mother and sister, stayed in Poland and lived under the communist regime until 1957, at which time they had an opportunity to leave and emigrate to Israel. Making a living in Israel was difficult, so after 4 years, Mark reached out to his family in America and was sponsored to come to the United States. Not knowing a word of English and having only $5 in his pocket, he boarded a ship and made his way across the ocean to start a new life for himself. With the help of family, he obtained work at a jewelry factory, sweeping floors. Working hard, he went to school to learn English and started to learn the trade of the company. Within 5 years, he rose to become the factory manager, and in 1971, Mark had the opportunity to purchase a wedding ring manufacturing company of his own. Over the next 40 years, Mark grew Lieberfarb Inc. into a successful nationally branded wedding ring and bridal brand. Now in retirement, Mark has dedicated his time to speaking with students and adults about his life's journey. Prior to the pandemic, Mark would travel nationwide and currently is traveling virtually to teach in the classroom about his childhood during the Holocaust. Mark has always lived by the saying, "Live every day with love, not hatred, and you will accomplish so much more in life." When you meet Mark, even though he is small in stature, his huge smile and love for life shines through. Married to his beautiful wife, Luba, for 55 years, and having two daughters, Anne and Isabella, he can say he has lived the American dream. Most recently, Anne, along with her sister, Isabella Fisk, created the foundation in honor of their father. She is also CFO of H. Arnold Wood Turning, Inc., a premier supplier of wood products, and the Chief Strategy Officer of BIG, Buyers Intelligence Group, which provides comprehensive, scalable industry solutions that deliver dramatically improved performance to jewelry retailers and manufacturers. After graduating from Lehigh and earning her CPA working at Deloitte, she ran Lieberfarb, a leading US-based designer and manufacturer of bridal jewelry for over 20 years, where she most recently served as CEO. As a 27-year industry veteran, Anne then founded the Arnold Advisory Group. She is proud of her accomplishments in and service to the jewelry industry. One of her greatest accomplishments has been publishing Together: A Journey for Survival. In September 2016, she was awarded the Simon Wiesenthal Center Heroes for Tolerance Award. She speaks to people of all ages all over the country and has written a lesson plan to accompany the book, which is now being used in many schools. So I will now turn it over to Anne and Mark to share their stories with us.
Thank you so much, Dory. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you all so much for having us tonight. We're really excited that you were able to join us. I'm just going to start with a few words, and then I'm going to turn the program over to my father, who will share his experiences, or at least highlights from his experiences. And then we are going to open it up to questions and answers. We love those. We want to hear from you what you want to hear from us. And my dad, he's great. He will answer anything. So either, and I'm not sure if we're going to be able to unmute, if not, put questions in the chat and I'll monitor that and I'll be able to ask them on your behalf. So to start, as you heard, I am the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, not so shocking, I know, but the reality is I've lived with this my whole life. And I never understood how unusual that is, or how unusual it was for people when I was growing up, until I started speaking and people never even realized my dad was a Holocaust survivor. And I've always been very interested in his story. Just to give you a little bit of context, I'm going to share my screen just so that you can see a little bit. I hope you can all see my screen here. And basically, my father is from a tiny little village in Poland. This star denotes Justek, which is the village that he was from. As you could see, it's surrounded by these skulls and crossbones, which are the concentration camps you may have heard of, such as Auschwitz, Belzec, and Janowska. And the reason they put the concentration camps in this part of Poland is because it's so remote and it's not that inhabited. And so it was very easy, they felt, for it to be overlooked. My father's little village had about 1,500 people that lived there prior to the war. 500 of them were Jewish. By 1945, after the war, by most accounts, of those 500 Jewish people that had lived in Justek, Less than 10 had survived, of which 3 were my dad, my aunt, and my grandmother. You know, we hear the words never forget. And for me, never forget has 2 meanings. We must never forget what happened. But we must also never forget that even in the ugliest of times, goodness can prevail. And it's because of good people that I'm even here today. My father grew up on a farm. We had the ability to go back and visit this the first time in the early 90s. This was actually his house that he grew up in. There was no road here back then. Half, or not even half, part of this house had been rented out to the Pewatt family, which my father will tell you about was a very integral part of the survival. And this was behind these barns in the back there. There's all these fields. And that was my grandfather's property. And when we first went back in the 90s, I was able to meet some people that helped save my dad. And I was even able to see some of the places that he had been hiding. This is an attic that he had been hiding in one winter. And when we were there, he would point to us and he took my sister and I up there and he goes, that's where it happened. And I remember the stories you told me about being in that attic and about hearing some Nazis starting to walk up the stairs. And when those heavy footsteps started going up, my grandmother grabbed her 2 children and hid under that hay that you see here. And what she did is she quickly told her children, don't say a word. And my dad said that there was a pitchfork sitting on the side of that wall. And the Nazi soldier took the pitchfork and started stabbing it into the hay, figuring he would hit somebody if they were there. We got lucky, they weren't hit. But seeing that and experiencing it was amazing. But it wasn't until 2009 that my life personally changed forever. This little village had been petitioned to have the Jewish cemetery reconsecrated, which means put back together. And they found out that my dad and my aunt were still alive. So they invited us back to Poland to be there for this ceremony. And it started the day where we were in the center of town on Town Hall, they erected this plaque that you see there. Now, I want to remind you and tell you, not one Jewish person has lived in this town since 1942. And here I stood at Town Hall, witnessing them putting a plaque up, acknowledging the fact that there were even Jews that lived in this town and commemorating and giving them a voice and letting them know and people know that there was a community that lived here that was completely wiped out. And that was amazing. About 40 people showed up. But it wasn't until we actually went down to the cemetery that I was shocked. They erected this tent and over 600 townspeople had come out to witness this day. Women with babes at their breast to people that remembered my father and came up to him and said, I remember you, I used to play with you as a child. And we found out that this town had heard about the project of reconsecrating the cemetery. And you see, when the Nazis came through, they had destroyed everything in their wake. And all these headstones were destroyed. And pieces of them had been used in masonry work throughout people's homes. And these people had started to go through and started knocking out anything in their driveways or in the walls in their homes or outside walls, anything that looked like it had Jewish lettering. And they brought pieces of these rocks back to the cemetery anonymously. And they were able to recover 33 headstones, of which one was my great-grandfather's. And they put a beautiful service on for us. And if I stopped there, it would be enough, but it wasn't enough. If you can tell in the back left corner, these tops here, these are buses. And they put us on buses and took us to the local high school, where these students and their parents Googled authentic Jewish food and created a buffet for us 20 feet long. The children in the high school, now, like I said, we're in a remote part of Poland. When I was there in the 90s, they were using horses and buggies. And these kids learned Hebrew and started singing and putting a concert on for us in Hebrew. And I have to tell you, the whole day, I had one thought going through my mind. What's in it for them? because there's no way people could be this good. Yes, I knew my family's story, but I had never witnessed it. I knew that there were good people that saved my dad, but I also knew that my family was targeted and murdered simply because we believed in a different God, and his name was a little different than somebody else's, because we looked different than other people. And to be there that day and see these people do this, I couldn't believe it. And at the end of the day, when I couldn't find my answer, I went up to the mayor and I said, I want to thank you for what you've done here today. And he said, I don't want your thanks. There's no thanks necessary. This was the only thing to do and the right thing to do. And I have to tell you, it sounds corny, but I was changed forever. It renewed my faith in mankind. And it's what motivated me to come back and finally get my dad's story down. I actually started it as a blog. And as things go, the blog kind of mushroomed and people kept telling me I should create and do the book, which is what led me to actually finally publish the book. It's called Together, A Journey for Survival. And since we published it, as you heard in 2016, we've been speaking all over the country to young adults, to young students, as well as adults of all ages, bringing this message of kindness and respect and hope to make everyone understand that they each have a voice. We recognized pretty soon that schools didn't have funding, which is what motivated my sister and I, right in time for COVID, to launch our foundation, which started at the end of 2019. And what we do now is we give grants to schools throughout the country that want to implement Holocaust education, because only 13 states actually mandate it. And even in those states, there's no funding for schools. So we did start, we've been able, thank God, to, in our very short, less than a year and a half time, reach over 18,000 students through our grants that we've given. But we want all of you to know that you all have a choice as well. Because you see, kindness and hope starts with each one of us. And if we each decide okay, someone keeps muting me, but I think I'm good. So if we all decide to take the path that is not always the easiest path, but the path that allows us not to just be bystanders, but to be upstanders, we are hoping that those voices that we see every time we turn on the TV and the violence that we see every time we turn on the TV these days, or listen to the radio or read a newspaper or an article, we're hoping that our voices of kindness and respect and love will one day drown out the voices of violence and hatred. And we hope you each take us and join us on that journey. So with that, I'd like to introduce my dad, Mark, who's going to share his experiences through the Holocaust. And then, like I said, we'll open it up to questions and answers. So Dad, take it away.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, the school, for inviting me. And I want to thanks to all the kids who are here that took their time and listen to my journey for survival during the Holocaust. Well, I will give you the highlights of my survival during this period of time. So, as Anne showing you on a map, the town which I'm coming from is Brzostek. My father was a religious person, like most of the people in Poland at those days were religious ones. He had a farm, and a nice size farm. And of course, having a farm, you have horses, cows, chickens, and all kinds of things. And he needed help. So he had a Polish family which was helping him. As like Anne mentioned, he gave them a room, 2 rooms actually, in the house. and they lived together with us. Excuse me. Well, 1939 came. The German occupied Poland in the matter of 3 weeks. And we did see him going through our town, tanks, artillery, motorcycles. And they just went, okay, it's a war, so it's a war. Nobody even imagined what the future is going to be for us. Well, a few months after everything settled, the Gestapo came to town, went to the police station, and started asking questions about the Jewish people. Well, after they got some of the answers, the chief of police tells the Gestapo guy, if you want more information, there is this guy, Sean Wetter, who is the head of the Jewish community. Go to him and ask him, maybe you need some more information. So he came to my father, started asking him things. Okay, I'll be back soon. And he kept his word. Soon he came back and he says, well, I want you to impose a law that all the Jewish people have to wear a band with a Star of David on their left arm. Everybody has to have this thing. All right, they went, they made those bands, they gave to everybody, okay. Well, it didn't take too long. He came in and he says, well, notify all the Jewish families that whoever has kids going to the school, they have to take them out and there is no more school. Okay. Then he comes back and he says to my dad, effective 2 days, you have to be out of this house. Find yourself a location someplace, rent a room someplace here, wherever you can. Take only personal belongings. And you're out. Okay, 2 days we went out and that was it. My father found a place and we live in somebody else's house now. So each time they need anything, they come and they call him into the police station. One day, it's late in the evening, he's not back. My mom was worrying, what's happened? Where is he? But there's nothing she can do. Somebody knocks on the door. She opens the door, and here stays the wife of the Polish chief of police, which my parents and them, they were good friends. They know each other for years. And she tells to my mom, listen, take your kids and get out of here, because I heard the Gestapo talking with my husband and mentioning they're going to take all the Jews in this town and take them away somewhere. So run away with the kids. And she left. Mom didn't know what to do. Well, she takes what she can with her, a little bag or something, takes 2 of us and goes back to our original house and goes to this Mr. Piwat, and she's telling him the story. And he says, well, it's late in the evening. I suggest tomorrow morning we're going to try to figure out something. right now go, he gives her name. It's my cousin. You sleep there. And pointing at me, he says, him, live here, let him sleep with my kids. And tomorrow morning, we get all together. Mom left, tells me go to sleep with the kids. That's what I do. Early in the morning, the door opens and the Gestapo walks in. They go straight to his bed and they say, get up. We were told that the Schoenwetter family is in your house. Where are they? He says, I'm sorry, but they're not here. I don't have any Schoenwetters here. So he looks at him and he says, okay, you're lying to me. Now I have people here, they're going to go and search the whole property. And you know what's going to happen? We're going to find them. And then I'm going to take you and them and kill them because you don't cooperate. So where are they? So I don't have to waste my time. He says, you go ahead. Look, they're not here. So he says to his people, search the property. He is walking out. Then he stops by the door, turns around, pinpoints of one of the kids, happened to be the older daughter, and he says to her, tell me, how many brothers and sisters do you have? And she says 7. So he goes, he counts 7, so he walks out. Well, I was the luckiest kid in the world that she included me in the count. So then Mr. Piwat came in, he says to all the kids, get outside, keep yourself busy. And he tells me, and you go out with them, but when you're outside, you run to the bushes behind the house there, hide yourself there, sit there, and don't come back to the house. I will come in and I take you. And that's what happened. After a few hours, he came, he took me, we went to my mom, and he tells her, listen, I really don't know what to suggest to you, the exception that I would say that you should go to a ghetto. There is this ghetto in this town, which happened to a town larger, much larger than our little tiny town. The name of them, Bice. And they from here wouldn't even think that you went there. They wouldn't suspect you be there. So they're not going to come there and look for you. So you'll be safe there and you can live there. Mom says, okay. So we walked for a few hours, got to the ghetto. He says, you see, this is the gate. Germans are staying, so they will let you in, don't worry. They won't ask questions. Okay, Mom walks in. So he takes 2 of us by hand, and we start walking this ghetto, trying to find a place to live. So while we walk, she's asking, do you know a place, someplace that I can find to live? So David didn't answer her. They look at her like she's crazy asking for a place here. So she goes, and we walk. Wherever we walked into any house, it was packed with people. By while we walking, we see people even living on the streets. Finally, after quite a few hours, Mom found a little tiny space on the attic of one of the houses. She grabbed the space. So we were sitting next to each other in this one little space. That will be our place to live. That's what we figured. But after all day walking like that, we were very hungry. While walking, we didn't see anything to get some food or nothing, just people laying on the streets. So she asked one of the persons next to us, how can I get some food here? So the person answers, well, the only way you're going to get food is you stay in line. Soon we're going to stay in line and get the food. So you're going to see, so wait. Okay, so we waited whatever it was time then, walked down, went outside, a line of people, we stay in the line. Finally, we get to the place when they give the food. It's a stand. So, okay, next, so we walk in. One of them says, soup. So gives us the soup. Gets a little, so you get a little cup, water, warm maybe, color, some kind of a little bit in it, and nothing else there, just the water. Oh, and then they give you a dry piece of bread. So we got this, went back to place and took 2 seconds, we were done with it. And that's how day by day we live on this food. You can imagine that the hunger was the day by day too, but there was no other choice. You couldn't get anything because there was no stores, there was nothing there. We got sick, Mom got sick, we got lice. She went and she cut our hair, but we were lucky somehow that we got somehow out from the sicknesses what we had, and we lived like that. After about 3 months living like that, there were rumors going on that they're going to liquidate the ghetto, but there was nothing anybody could do because there was no way you could get out from there. So we were just hoping maybe they will let us stay there. Maybe they wouldn't liquidate the ghetto. One day, a little boy comes into my mom and he says, listen, there is a man staying on the other side of the fence. He asked me to find you and bring you over. Come on, let me show you. So Mom goes with him, and who is the Mr. Piwa? And he says to my mom, listen, go quick back, pick up 2 kids and come right away back. I show you how to get out. Make it fast. Mom runs, brings me and my sister, and he says, okay, now, look, I am throwing a blanket over the barbed wire on top. You take a kid one at a time and throw him over on the other side. But Mom says to him, I don't have any strength to do it. I don't know I can pick up even this kid. I'm so weak. I hardly walk. He says, you can do it. You can do it. You're strong enough. And besides, look at those 2. They skin and bone. There is no weight there. You can do it. Come on, come on. Don't waste time. We don't have time. Do it fast. Come on. Pick him up. Pick him up. And she did it. Then he tells her, now you climb and you jump and I catch you. And that's what happened. We got out. He says, okay, let's walk into this house. I made arrangements with those people. He says to us, okay, take all these dirty clothes, throw it out. I have fresh clothes for you I brought in. So when we walk in town, they wouldn't see you like that because they would be suspicious right away. And here's some food. Eat a little bit because I'm sure you're hungry. And then we go. And that's what happened. We walked through the town. Then we went to one of the villages. when he got to this place, there was a house we see standing right next to a forest. And he says to the lady, well, those are the people that we talked about. So she looks at Mom and she says, look, I see you have two little kids here. Are you promising me that those two little kids, if I take you, they're not going to talk, they're not going to cry, laugh? They have to be quiet, not a word from their mouth. Do you think you can make this? They will listen to you? She says, yes, yes. Okay, so let's try. Go upstairs to the attic, cover yourself with the hay, and you're not going to go out from there. You're just going to sit there day and night. During the day, I will come up, I give you some food, and that's it. Otherwise, you just sit there. You're not going out. Mom says, okay. And that's how it happened to be a fall. We lived through the whole winter in this house. Well, the spring came in, started getting warm. She came to Mom and she says, listen, that's it. I'm not going to hold you anymore. You have to leave. Mom says, but I behaved. Kids were quiet. Everything was okay. Why are you throwing me out? I don't have a place to go. What am I going to do? I don't want to take chances. Farmers coming out, working in the fields, and maybe they will notice some. I'm afraid. No, go. So he says, I tell you what, why don't you take the kids, go into the forest, winter, summer is coming, it's going to be warm, and you can live in the forest. So Mom says, okay, I don't have a choice, let's go. So she takes two of us, we're walking into this forest, start walking around looking for places. We went a little bit deep into the forest, not too deep, but deep enough, and found a place between bushes, make ourselves comfortable in the bushes, and we start living in this forest. So what Mom did, when we got into the forest, she says to us, okay, we're going to start walking around in this area. And we have to walk around and look if we can find some berries, some mushrooms, anything wild growing so we can eat, because we don't have how else to get food. So while we're walking, I'm going to teach you which mushrooms are poison and you're not supposed to touch them, which one are good, we're going to take. And same thing with everything else we come across. I'm going to teach you, we pick up the good stuff and we live on it. And that's what we were doing through the whole summer, picking up this food, and we ate this, and we ate this. But it was a couple, 2 or 3 times during whole summer that Mr. Piwat came in, brought a loaf of bread for us, so we had something to eat. Well, when it was raining, we got wet. But when the rain stopped, we took our clothes off, we hanged on the trees, they dried out, we put them back on, and we lived like that. Now the winter came. So when the winter came, well, you cannot sit in the forest. So my mom, with 2 of us, start walking around at night, always at night, to some farmers, knock on the door and begging them if they can take us. And occasionally we got lucky. Somebody took us in and told us just for a week, but sometimes we stood 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but then we had to leave. So again, in snow, in cold weather, and freezing, walking during the night to look for another location. And if we couldn't find, we were just hiding in the snow, laying all day and waiting for the evening so we can start walking around and looking for another place. And again, when the summer came, we went back to the forest and we lived in the forest, same way as the previous year. Then winter came, again, we start walking around. And we stop at one of the farmers and he tells us, well, I feel really sorry for you and 2 kids. Let me think, come back, I figure out maybe something. So we came back in a couple days and he says, okay, I figured out the place for you, but let me show you if you agree to stay there. He takes us to a pigsty. And he says, you see, I dig here a little space, but you see, it's not deep. It's very shallow. Now you'll be able only probably, you're not being able even to sit here. So the only thing you have to do is lay down. You think, can you handle this? Mom says, sure, I will. No problem. I will. So he says, okay, step in, lay down. So we did. So he goes, he puts pieces of wood on top. Then he puts hay on top of it. And then he brings in the pigs, 2 pigs. And we live on the bottom, the pig live on top of us. And we lived like that through the whole summer. We were lucky and happy that we have a place, considering all the unpleasant things that we had to go through living in this cold with the pigs on top of us. But we had a place. He came in once a day. He made a hole, so he shoved some food inside there. And we ate this. We were happy that we don't have to be here, go in snow, freeze, and all those things. Then in 1945, summer again, we went to the forest. And we stood in the forest for a few months, 3 or 4 months. And then we start hearing explosions. And then the explosions are getting closer and closer. So Mom says to us, no way we can sit in the forest anymore. I don't know where, but we have to somehow get out from here. We're going to see where to go, but I don't know where. Let's just move out away from the area that it's so close or already the explosions. So when we went on a little tiny road, we all of a sudden see people, Polish people, groups. Every few minutes, another group is moving by, another. So my mom tells the 2 of us, you know what? What we're going to do when one of the groups comes, we see mortars, we're just going to stay a little behind them and keep walking wherever they go. But remember, now we are Polish people. We escaping the front line. Now your names are, and she gives us Polish names. Remember, those are your names. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And she teaches us. well, we were already quite a bit experienced. So we learned, and then walking and walking, finally in a couple villages past, some people were starting taking people. So they took us too, and we start living as Polish people, escaping from the front line. And 1945, January, February, all of a sudden we see some soldiers walking, and we recognize that those that doesn't look like Germans, but who could they be? So they got to the house, they start talking, which we didn't understand the language. One knew Polish a little bit, and he says to us, well, we are the Russian army. We are the liberators. Now you don't have to worry. There is no more Germans around here. You can go back to your house from wherever you come. We checked everything around, no more Germans. And they left. Well, we were so happy. But Mom was telling to us, don't say nothing. Just be quiet, just be quiet. Don't jump, don't say nothing, not a word. Because it's still dangerous. We have to make sure that everything is good. So we were staying for another week or so with this family. When we go, well, we go back to our house. So we went back to Brzostek, to our house. But coming back there, we see our house is demolished. So we go into the basement. We make ourselves comfortable in the basement. And now not many people in town because people escape because of the front being so close there. And now Mom is saying, well, we don't know. We don't see any people here. Is there any family that will come here and look for us? Or we look for other family or other neighbors that we knew? Let's wait another few days, a week, and see if anybody is coming. But there is nobody. There is nobody coming, with the exception, one cousin came. And, oh, of course, we're happy to see you. Where were you? Well, I was in a labor camp, and the Russians liberated us, and I walked out from there. I was strong enough to walk. So first I came here back to the house because I used to live here with you. And again, after 2 days, he says, I'm not staying here. It's dangerous. There's nobody going to come back. So Mom was, what do you mean nobody's going to come? So he says, yeah, nobody's going to come. There's nobody left. Well, Mom took us and we left the Brzostek and we went to a larger town. And that's where we start living after the war. So I gave you highlights of my survival. And as Anne mentioned, right now, what I am doing, I'm going and talking to people, to kids, young adults, and trying to share with them what happened in this situation to me. But there were, unfortunately, very few people that survived, because from the 6 million Jews which were killed, and from the 3 million Jews which was in Poland only killed, later, if I'm not correct, correct me, I think only maybe 300. No, 300 or something like that, which survived this whole thing. So what we need to do is to remember that this thing will never happen again. And I don't want to be, saying, but unfortunately, you, the young generation, and it is on your shoulders to continue and convince people that with hatreds, you're not going to accomplish anything. So I will finish here. Hope that you can do it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I'll try my best to answer you. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Dad. And thanks, everybody. I know if you're willing to stay a little longer, we do have the time for a couple of questions. If anybody would like to either unmute themselves or put it in the chat, we'd be more than willing to answer them. So, Dad, one of the first questions is, where did you go after the war? I know you mentioned that you left your tiny village of Justek and you went to a larger village. Could you just talk for a couple minutes about where you went after the war?
Well, we went to a larger town, which the name was Tarnów. And when we got in there, we started finding out that more Jewish people were coming to this town. Not exactly from this town, but from, like us, from different villages surrounding, because they were kind of hesitant to stay in this location, in their villages. But in a larger town, you had the police station. It was town, so it was different. So that's where we start our life. And remember that we start our life, and happened to be soon, not too long after that the communists took over, and we start living under the communist regime.
So one of the questions is, how old was my dad during this experience? And when the war started, he was 5. When he was actually hiding, because it took a few years until they got kicked out of their house, he was actually hiding for 3 years from the time he was 9 to when he was 12, and was liberated when he was 12 years old.
Mm.
So another question is, after the war, Dad, were you able to go back and see the people who gave your family shelter?
Oh, after the war, yes. As a matter of fact, I went to Poland several times.
And I got lucky that I got to meet some of the people also that gave them shelter. And my grandmother actually kept in touch with them for many years.
Yeah, my mom kept in touch with them. And while we were living in Poland, every week my mom used to go to the village. Because it don't live, but it used to be a day that they had a market. So she always had this one particular day, which was a Wednesday. She went there and she was buying some things to eat. And she was bringing it home, so we had food. And then I went several times.
So one of the other questions, Dad, is, what language did you speak with your mother? Did you speak Yiddish or Polish? And did that affect your survival?
We spoke Polish. Right. Though I learned a little Yiddish, because in town there, when we lived, there were Jewish people and they talk a little Yiddish between each other. So I did learn some Yiddish words and I understood. But our basic language was Polish.
And what was the general feeling when the Soviets arrived of your family? What was your general feeling?
when we lived under the,
No, when, and I assume, and I'm sorry, John, you're asking about the arrival of the Soviets. Are you talking about when this communism started, or are you talking about when he got liberated?
When he got liberated, ma'am.
Got it. Thank you. So, Dad, when you got liberated, tell us about the feeling of your family.
well, when we got liberated, they told that they Russian and so far and so far. We were so happy, you can imagine. However, as I mentioned, my mom was very suspicious of everything, careful of everything. That's why she was telling us, don't talk, don't say nothing, because maybe they came, maybe those are Germans, and they found some kind of a different clothes they have, and now they're going to trick us and tell us who we are, and then they're going to kill us. So you better be quiet, not a word. But originally, when we heard this, and then we saw, of course, we were thrilled to death.
So did you understand what was happening when everything gets started, or did you just listen to whatever your mom told you to do?
Well, we realized that times are bad, that we have to hide, but the basic reasons behind that, we didn't realize why. We were too young.
My grandmother would tell a story about how my dad, it was, I think when they were hiding in the pigsty, they were allowed out one day a week, or sometimes every couple of weeks when everyone was at church, and they were allowed to go into the pigsty. And my dad was looking through like the little barbed wire, call it window if you want, that was in there. And he was asking my grandmother, so I don't understand. The chickens can run around and the birds can fly free. What did we do so wrong that we're not allowed to be outside? And, it was a testament to my grandmother about, well, things will be different, it'll be fine. And it was very difficult as a mom to explain that, but she used to tell us how it was hard. So anyway, so another question is, were the people who hid your family paid to hide you? What was their motivation, and what were the repercussions of this for them?
Well, we didn't pay because we didn't have money. There was no such a thing as money. So the reason they were doing this only for a goodwill. They felt sorry for us. They were just plainly good people that they felt sorry in this situation for a woman with two small kids.
And there was a few people, as I mentioned, that knew my grandfather, and like the Pewatt family, there was another family.
There were a couple people in town that when the first time Mom came to them, and back then, so they took us right away, but they told us right away, because we in town here, we cannot hold you too long, but in emergency, if you don't have any other place to go, Eddie, nobody wants you, then come in, we hold you for a week or so, and then you can leave the kids here, go find another place, someplace. And that's what Mom did. Those people, there were two families that we used to come and stay there for a short period and find another location.
Another question is, how did you occupy yourself during the days and nights in hiding when you could only lie down and not talk?
Well, it was two different things. In the forest, okay, at least call it, we had space. We moved around, we walked around. There is nothing we could do because we had to be also quiet and careful because we have to watch everything. So we couldn't let anybody pass by and see us. So we were very careful, Mom was teaching us. Now, different when we were hiding in an attic, we were hiding in a pigsty, we had to be quiet. So basically, occasionally we were kind of very quiet, talking to each other a few words. besides that, there was nothing else.
And I think Grandma used to try to teach you like your letters. Your
Occasionally she tried to teach us, but she was showing us on a hand, like 1, 2, 3, and sometimes on a hand showing A or B, how to write. But that was the most.
So another question is, in Israel, there's a Holocaust memorial called Yad Vashem. Has any of the people who saved you been recognized there? And I do believe there was one family that was recognized there.
Yes, there was one family that was recognized. We were involved in it. And then people were asking us, why don't you give the name of this or the name of this or the name of this? They were helping you. And Mom didn't want to do. And let me tell you, the reason was very simple. When this person was acknowledged and was announced where they lived, that she, in Poland, that she was honored, there were some people that they were calling her, oh, you help a Jew? You a helper to Jews? You a helper to Jews? And the person was very, very depressed that people were treating her not nice, didn't want to talk to her. So my mom said, that's it. It may be nice to get a piece of paper, but it's not nice in life for them later to live with it and have people not talking to them or calling them names.
So I will say the Piwa family that helped save my father, my grandmother had given him after the war. They had a lot of land, and my grandmother was lucky enough to get all of her property and her land back, and she was able to sell most of it. But one part of the land with a piece of a separate house, she gave to Mr. Piwat as, let's call it a thank you, whatever way you can say it. And then he has had that in his family for generations. And the last time we went to Poland in 2016, we met Mr. Piwat's grandson, who now lives on the property and has since rebuilt a new house on the property. But he showed us on the property where he saved a part of the building, and he kind of made it into a memorial for his own family, because the story is as much theirs as it is ours. And he always wants his family to remember what they did as well, and that this is how they had their family. And it was very sweet. He was wonderful, kind. We had a wonderful day with him. And it's, again, just one more example of the goodness of people and how it affects people in different ways. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you so much for having us. You can find us if there's any other questions. We do have a Facebook page for both Together, A Journey for Survival and the Mark Schoenwetter Holocaust Education Foundation. So you can message us either way on Facebook or Instagram if you would like to get any other information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ann and Mark. So Jackie is now going to lead us in the Kaddish.
Thanks, Dory. Mr. Schoenwetter and Ann, I just want to thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story with us. Leah, I'm going to share my screen because this is a different Mourner's Kaddish than the one I'm going to do. But before I even do that, I just wanted to explain a little bit. In the very beginning, we lit 6 candles. Great, thank you. Those candles are called Yortzeit candles, and the reason why we lit 6 of them is to commemorate their memory of the 6 million Jewish people that were murdered during the Holocaust. So just in case you weren't sure what those candles were or what the significance of 6 were, that's what that was all about. So before I recite the Mourner's Kaddish, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it is, just in case you don't know. The Mourner's Kaddish. So the Kaddish is a 13th century Aramaic prayer said during every traditional prayer service. Kaddish means sanctification in Aramaic, and it is related to the Hebrew word kadosh, which means holy. Of the 5 variations of the Kaddish, the best known is the Mourner's Kaddish. The prayer never mentions death or dying, but instead proclaims the greatness of God. By reciting it, mourners show that even as their faith is being tested by their loss, they are affirming God's greatness. This Mourner's Kaddish is a special version of it because in the prayer, embedded in the prayer, are the names of some of the concentration camps. So as I go through and say it, Lee, I don't know if you can follow along, starting with the number 1, but as she points to it and as I pause, we can recite the name of that concentration camp. So if you are so moved, you can unmute yourself so that we can all say this together. No obligation and don't feel pressured, but if you'd like to do that, that would be wonderful. So Yit Gadal, V'Kadash, Saw, Shmei Rabbah, Auschwitz, Bialma Dirutei, Dachau, Biamlich Malchutei, Buchenwald, B'Chayechon, Uvyomechon, Babi Yar, Uchaye Dechal Beit Yisrael, Baghdad, Uvizman, Kariv, Hebron, Meru, Amen. Yehei Shnei Rabbah, Barach, Etzion, V'Pa'ar, V'Mayens, Naseh, V'Padar, Teres, V'Talev, V'Talal, Treblinka, Kudishah, Richu, Bergen-Belsen, Le'elah, Vilna, Mikal, Birchata,
Vishirata,
Usha,
Ushbahata,
Nehamat, Masada, Da'amiran,
Miran, Balma,
Jerusalem, Bimru,
Amen.
Yehei, Shlama,
Shemaya,
Chaim, Aleinu,
Kol Yisrael,
Bimru,
Bimru, Amen.
Oseh,
Shalom, Bimru,
Shalom, Aseh,
Says
Shalom,
Shalom, Aleinu, Kol Yisrael,
Amen.
Bimru, Amen.
I just wanted to once again thank Mark and Anne so much for giving their time to us so that we could all have this deeply meaningful opportunity and conversation. And I just wanted to thank all of you for taking the time to attend so that we can be together in our sadness and pain, but most importantly, together in our hope and strength.
Thank you so much for being here. This was amazing.
Thanks again for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight also in sharing this remarkable story with us.
Well, thanks again for having us, and we'll hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you, Anne.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you so much for having us.
Good night, Mr. Schoenwetter.
Bye.